I do want women to know that there is an alternative to suppressing their bodies with hormones, that they can see their body as a good and they can live in that body holistically.
Totally. Oh my gosh. It's amazing.
Join co-hosts Jamie Rocci and Teresa Kenny as they educate women about the beauty of the feminine design and empower women to take charge of their health.
They're going to be so amazing. You're going to be so empowered by understanding your feminine genius and your hormone genius. I don't think I could live my whole life knowing this and not sharing it with anyone.
Hello there. This is Jamie Rocci with the Hormone Genius Podcast, and I'm here with my co-host Teresa Kenny, as well as Jen Winkler. We have interviewed Jen Winkler in the past, and I loved the interview. She does such a good job of communicating. You're very smart, Jen, and we wanted to have you on again to share a little bit about your journey since we interviewed you last time. And so, Jen, you're a wife, you're a homeschooling mom, and a functional health and hormone coach. I know Jen because she went through the Fiat Institute. And again, that's where I'm learning, like, whoa, Jen, you have a lot of experience just from your own struggle and from your own health. But I love that you use your experience with, some of the suffering that you've had to endure, and that you use what you're learning to serve others. And so, again, I love your mission in this world. I love your motive to help and restore women in their health and hormones. And I'm just so happy that you're on the show with us today.
Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to share how things have progressed and where things are at, learn new things that I have learned and such.
Oh, I'm so excited. Okay, so for those of you who have not listened to Jen's first interview, please go back and search Jen Winkler, Hormone Genius Podcast. But since that interview, Jen has had a bit of a mindset shift in regards to how she views keto and carnivore. When she came on the first time, we talked a lot about it. And again, keto and carnivore can be very therapeutic and healthy and good for certain people in certain seasons at certain times. And so it's very individual based on what is a good choice for somebody at a certain point of life. But what we really want you to talk about, Jen, again, is just how this transformation of thought has evolved. So what has kind of shifted your mindset in regards to eating keto and carnivore? And now how do you view the plate? When you encourage women to think about their plate, how has that mindset shifted and what does the plate look like now?
So, a really quick summary, but I've been keto since 2018. So I guess whatever that math is, I stopped last year, but 7-8 years between keto and carnivore. So very low carb, under 20 grams of carbs, and very heavy animal based. A lot of it did help initially. I have been able to get off a lot of medications, and my mental health was doing a lot better. There's numerous things, like you said, we've talked about in the last episode. And so I coached women using ketogenic, very low carb to reverse insulin resistance, PCOS, which there is evidence for that it can help. The part that was difficult was being in that health space. There's a lot of talk that this is the way to be forever because it made you feel better and it healed whatever was going on. So yeah, shouldn't we just keep doing this, right? And so I was in that mindset for a bit, and it did teach me, there's a lot of lessons I learned during that time that I realized, things like to prioritize protein, and the importance of healthy fats. But there can be too much of a good thing. Water is good for you. Air is good for you. Too much of it, not so much, right? So there's this mindset of, since fat is good for your hormones, keto must be incredible. And we're just gonna eat tons of sticks of butter and all that kind of stuff, right? But there is a limit to it. So anyways, I was doing that. And while things improved initially, there became this mountain, I don't know, it was this peak that it was really good, and then it started kind of sloughing off. And my sleep started suffering. And interestingly enough, knowing how to track my cycle, it was always that last week before my period, the last week of the luteal phase, where things just were not feeling good. Anxiety was going up, all kinds of stuff. I got my hormones checked and the doctor said it was okay. I was like, I don't know, estrogen seems a little high. It's not super high, but it was for my age and for what was going on. It was a little bit there. So anyways, I also did a gut test. I started looking at Tiny Health, which I don't know if you guys have talked about that on here, but I did my own Tiny Health gut test and I was thinking, wow, this is not good. I got a very bad score, a lot of gut inflammation, ammonia through the roof, trimethylamine, like all these things due to the very high protein and very low fiber stuff. Also, my thyroid was not doing so great, thyroid conversion, I should say. So that's when I started watching other videos of, vegetarians, plant-based. Just, I like to be well-rounded in my knowledge. I don't want to get all my information from one camp. So I started watching those and it started becoming very interesting of how they were reversing insulin resistance with high carbs. But yeah, there's so much more I could go with. I'll let you go, Teresa.
No, this is good. This is good because I do think I'm very much like you, Jen, in the sense that I never want to just take information from one camp or one source. And almost like you always have to say, if someone is against this, why are they against it? Because there's truth in everything to some degree. And so we have to like go to those truths and be like, okay, where is where I'm at right? Where is where I'm at wrong? Because there's probably a little bit of both. And as you said, I often think about just like from the standpoint of human beings thousands of years ago, what would have been more likely? Of course, we would have been more animal-based. Of course we would have, but there would have been variation. And that would be the thing that what we're talking about here is it appropriate to always be the same? And especially when you're in kind of a limited nutrient state, when I say that, like if you're only animal-based and very low carb, is that truly how the human person was meant to survive as? And probably the answer is no. There would have been variation, feast and famine. There would have been times when you ate animals, times when you didn't have animals. So what did you do? You collected eggs and you just had, fruit and vegetables that you could grow. So we have to remember that the human body was built for this type of balance and variation. So I want you, Jen, to actually go back to that Tiny Gut Health test. And yes, we actually have had an entire podcast about their testing and we love them. And we have an affiliate link, Hormone Genius, so people can get $50 off because it is great information. But I want you to explain when somebody gets into a state of maybe ketosis for long periods of time and heavy amounts of protein, where can that topple over? Like, give us the kind of science where you saw in that Tiny Gut Health test that there was evidence there was too much of a good thing.
Yeah, I definitely want to answer that. I also want to say real quick, because I get passionate on this, when you said about ancestral, what our lifestyle was like back then, the problem is our life that we live in right now is not the same as what it was 1,000 years ago. We have EMFs, we have lots of pesticides, lots of, all kinds of stuff that affect our nervous system and affect our whole physiological makeup and all kinds of stuff. So there's the genetic aspect too. The people, the Inuit were not eating the same as those in Africa. So it's like, what are your genetic makeup? So when people say ancestrally appropriate, we have to realize it's multifaceted and carbs play more of a role than just the macronutrient. That's one of the things I've been harping on. It's not just the macronutrient of carb, fat, and protein. When you eat fruits and you eat vegetables, there's other things like polyphenols, antioxidants, certain fibers, all those kind of things that help with our gut health and the gut is so important to our hormones. So let me get back to your question first. The Tiny Health, how did I know I had too much of a good thing? Well, the two I mentioned, there was very high ammonia. So if your gut's not working properly and you're eating a lot of protein, the ammonia will rise and it ferments within your gut. And we've heard this so many times. And then we hear a lot of people in the heavy animal-based atmosphere trying to debunk it. But for me, that was literally what was happening. It was fermenting in my colon, creating high amounts of ammonia. Hexa-LPS, and I'm trying to remember all the markers, but I know all the inflammation markers, Hexa-LPS and the others were also very elevated. Trimethylamine, which is connected to the protein breakdown, was very elevated. So those kind of things. My microbiome markers, I had 0 bifidobacteria, which is a very important one. I was at 0%. And then I had high amounts of various dysbiotic bacteria. So that's the negative pathogen ones. E. coli, I had a good amount of, surprisingly. There was just a lot of those kind of things. I'm trying to remember what other ones, because I haven't looked at it in a bit. But I redid it. I did a protocol. I did some probiotics, prebiotics, strategic things. You don't just go and do it your random self. Killing off the good. And it was about 3 to 4 months when I retested. My initial score was around 40 out of 100, and my score went up to 84. And all the digestive capacities were improved. Things like being able to create and absorb and utilize different vitamins. The short chain fatty acids were much better versus to the first time. All the inflammation was gone. The dysbiosis was almost completely gone. There was like a tiny little bit of one of them. So I just fixed that as appropriate. And then I had bifidobacteria, which is a really important one for a microbiome. And the fact I saw it in the green, I was so happy. It's like, finally. So, so there was a lot of stuff there that was a problem. And then when your gut's a problem, you're not going to be converting thyroid properly. So now my thyroid hormone is I can get into this afterwards if I was going to.
Well, actually, I was going to ask you, Jen. So we talked about the gut, and you did a really good job, reviewing some of these issues and how it has been resolved simply by adding a whole plate. So you're adding your complex carbs, you're adding your fibers. Yep. It's not just an all or nothing sort of deal. It's not just all protein and no complex carbs and no fiber.
Right.
Things. It's like a full balanced plate. So
correct.
Okay, and so we talked about the gut. So I was going to ask you, so how was your thyroid affected initially, and then how is eating a whole plate resolved? How did it resolve that? And then also your liver, because we know we need B vitamins, we know we need protein for your liver to work properly, but if there's too much, then what happens? So go on and talk about the thyroid and the liver.
Yeah, so in the beginning, before keto, my liver enzymes were perfectly fine. And in a functional range, I like to see the ALT and AST between 10 and 20. And mine was always there. Once I went keto, it went up a little bit into like the low 30s. But as I went on in my journey, it was getting higher into the 40s and 50s. And of course, no doctors ever said anything, but knowing labs from a functional range, I knew this was a problem. And I kept thinking it was maybe my epilepsy medication or something like that, because I was still on a low dose of it. But then last year around June is when I started shifting my macronutrients to bring fat down and bring carbs up. And about 4 months after that, when I tested it, my liver enzymes were down to normal in functional range, 10 to 20. I think it was around 20 on both of them. So see, like when you're not eating carbohydrates, this is one of the things carnivores will say, is it's okay. It's not an essential nutrient because your body will make the glucose it needs through the process of gluconeogenesis. The problem is that becomes a constant, and then it burdens the liver. And the liver already has a lot that it's working on. So in my mind, I'm like, well, why am I going to make it produce gluconeogenesis or do gluconeogenesis to produce glucose when I can just eat it externally, right? Like I can eat fruit, I can eat complex carbs, I can have oatmeal, rice, whatever it is. So I really believe that was part of the problem, why my liver enzymes were so high, was my body was trying to create the glucose that it needed. Now, the other part is people like myself who are type A personalities, we need more for our nervous system. Nervous system thrives using carbs and glucose. So I think my liver was in overdrive, really trying to make that glucose to calm my nervous system. And by bringing in the carbohydrates and just enjoying all the fruit I want, which was so incredible during the summer, my nervous system was calming. My heart rate was going down. Like I already said, the liver enzymes. And then the thyroid, my TSH has always been normal. This is one of my gripes with conventional medicine is they usually only check TSH, maybe free T4 if you have even a somewhat decent doctor. But all that tells you is what your thyroid is actually producing. It's telling us what your pituitary is telling your thyroid, please produce this amount of hormone. And that can work okay in someone, but they can still be hypothyroid because your thyroid makes about 80% of T4 and 20% of it is T3. Getting a little sciencey here, T3 is the one your body actually uses. T4 has to be converted into T3 through your liver, through your gut, and sometimes through some other peripheral tissues. So if your gut's not in order, or if it's being stressed out, if your liver's being stressed out, the conversion then lowers. You're not going to get as much free T3, and T4 converts into what's called reverse T3. So when I do blood work with clients, I always do the full panel. I do reverse T3, free T3, we do the whole thing. If I see reverse T3 high and free T3 low, there is something stressing the body. Ketosis is a type of stressor. Workouts are a stressor. Those are good things, but they're still a stressor. And if it's too much, it's going to be a problem. So my free T3 on carnivore was down at 1.9. Functionally, we like it between 3 and 5. My reverse T3 was 26. We like it under 15. My body was in a constant stressor. Bringing in a lot of carbohydrate, well, a lot for me. It was like between 250 to 350 grams of carbs for a while. Now I'm kind of finding my balance around 200 to 250. And all of that went down. My reverse T3 last I checked 3 months ago, it was down to 17, I believe it was, which is still a little elevated, but it takes time. I've been doing this for a long time. And my free T3 is just at the cusp at like 2.8. So it's on its way up. And it's so interesting because people freak out saying like carbs are going to make me fat. I've actually lost more weight bringing in the carbs because my body's feeling safe now. It's not having to overwork and do too much. So so that's where those numbers were at.
That's super interesting. And I just did a talk on thyroid where I kind of explained this whole phenomenon, Jen, in terms of how your body will preserve T3 for a certain amount of stress. It will keep everything balanced because it knows how important T3 is, obviously because it's the active hormone, until it can't anymore. And that usually is in a state of more chronic or severe stress. So that happens when people have also they're just undernourished, like nutrient deficiency, like eating disorder. That will happen. But this is unique because it's the exact opposite in some ways. Like you wouldn't necessarily be calorically deficient, but you were deficient in nutrients that your body kind of needed. And that is where the body was telling you that there is the stress. And the reverse T3 is putting the brakes on so that you can preserve energy. It lowers your metabolism. Yes. So you aren't able then to eat as much when you have a lower metabolism. So it's just all fascinating. And it also shows how important it is to test and not just guess that something is good for you. It is important to get full thyroid labs, to work with someone who understands thyroid labs, especially if you are experimenting in certain ways like fasting, like doing keto, things like that, which again, we're not saying are inherently bad. And I still am a huge believer that therapeutically, these diets sometimes really lower in inflammation and they address insulin resistance, as of course you said, Jen. But I think the last thing you said, I want to circle back around to, and that's this fear of gaining weight. Obviously, in the world that we live in now, there has been kind of a pendulum swing in terms of like, first it was all carbs good. And then we realized, that was kind of wrong. And the fear of fat was wrong. And then we realized fat is good. So there was a swing back to the natural belief that fat is good for the body. And then we kind of got really fearful of carbs and everything got centered on the fact that carbs and sugars is what makes you fat in a sense, from this idea of your body has to produce too much insulin and then you have to go into storage and then you're going to store fat cells, right?
Yeah.
So can you just explain, because I think people will worry, especially maybe if they've lived a little low carb, why is it that for your body, it didn't cause weight gain? And also, would that be not true for someone else? Could they have been low carb for a long time and then put carbs back in and they do gain weight because their body is in a different state?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So that's all based on the carb insulin theory and we do know when we eat carbs, glucose rises, right? When glucose rises, our pancreas produces insulin to shuttle the glucose somewhere. So it kind of makes sense. And it made sense a lot for me for a long time that, well, if someone's insulin resistant, just don't give them the carbs that spikes the glucose that causes the insulin to rise. But it's so much more complex than that. Like insulin is a fat storing hormone, but that's not what it's limited to. It does a lot more than that as well, right? So it's everything in balance which I used to hate that term, say everything in moderation. But now I kind of get where it can apply is insulin does more than that. It helps with muscle growth. It helps with hormones. It helps with a lot of things. So what we want to do is when we eat something that has carbohydrates in it, we want that glucose to rise, but not too high. We want insulin to be able to shuttle the glucose where it needs to go. And when someone is insulin resistant, that's part of the reason. It's like the key's trying to open the door, but it's the keyhole might be jammed or it's not the right match. So then it requires more effort or more keys, or we need to clean up, and it starts building up. So instead of just removing the keys, why don't we look at what the problem is? Why are the insulin receptors not working properly? It's not due to fruits. It's not due to vegetables or tubers or rice. It's due to some sort of inflammation, some sort of cellular metabolism issue. A lot of times things like, certain seed oils, circadian rhythm is a big part too. Are we getting enough light outside? I've noticed myself with glucose. I've tested this out. I had one meal for breakfast inside the house under my typical lights and watched my glucose curve. And it went up and it went down. I wish I can remember the number, but when I had that same meal the next day outside in the morning sunlight, the glucose curve was much lower. And light is something, it sounds a little woo-woo for some people. Like, how can light help blood sugar? That's weird. But it's so true. Like, we have photoreceptors in our eyes, and it's signaling things to our brain on what to do. And I wish I could give you all the sciencey, geeky things about it. I can't, but I know it works, right? So doing things like that, getting enough sunlight, getting enough vitamin D. Also, you don't get vitamin D just because you're in the sunlight. It depends on what time of day it is and where you live. Well, that's another story. So those are some of the things with the insulin. For myself, I think I didn't gain the weight because my body was screaming for it. It was asking, like, I need calming of my nervous system. I am a mom. I have my own business. I homeschool. I also foster. I take care of my disabled mom. I got a lot of stress on me. Like, my system's like, chill, Jen, chill. Like, relax. So when the body's relaxed, also the micronutrients, fixing the gut, I think it was multifaceted, honestly. I'm not going to say carbs fix everything. That's not my thing, but it's definitely a tool. Now, would somebody else gain a lot of weight? There's a strategy to it. I didn't just throw in 200 grams of carbs, right? I went a little slowly, little by little, week by week, bringing up the carbs a little bit. You also want to bring the fats down as you go. So it was strategic, and that's why I work with clients. Like, if they're trying to come out of that low carb ketogenic, I guide them on how to do it properly so they don't gain the weight. And so that was a big part of it all as well.
This is so interesting. I love the test that you did where you ate the same meal outside as you did in. That's incredible. Yeah. I really want to get a CGM, Jen, and run 1 million experiments because it's going to be awesome. So
I can send you a link of.
Would you?
An affordable one. Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Thank you, Jen. Thanks. Sure. Okay, so let's talk about stress and let's talk about fasting. It's on my to talk about list with you, Jen, because normally when we think about ketosis, we're thinking about how do we get into the state of ketosis? Well, we want to increase our protein. We want to limit our blood sugar spikes, and also we want to fast. And so again, certain reasons and seasons would be a great, but I can't even count the number of times I have friends or people who know me, from an outer circle reach out and say, how do you feel about fasting? Should I be fasting? Should I be fasting? I'm like, man, I get that question from random people the most. You know what I mean? And I think when someone has a past history with a disordered eating, like I do, and I know Teresa, and many of us have histories of disordered eating. To me, I see big red flags whenever I think about restricting food in general. And then, of course, restricting certain food groups. So anytime anyone would ask, I'm always wondering, what's your relationship with food? Because that to me is kind of like the number one data point that I need before I even offer, a suggestion or my thought. Okay. So in regards to fasting, Jen, from your experience, who would be the person who ideally might benefit from fasting? And then what do you see a detriment being in regards to fasting, and specifically in terms of stress to the body?
Yeah. I would say the ones that could benefit the most are severely overweight or obese. I think, if someone's, I'm not going to put a number because it's different for everybody, but the severely obese can definitely benefit from it to help lose that weight and lower the inflammation. If you're somebody looking to lose like 20 to 50 pounds, I would say it's not worth it. The other factor is keeping in mind where you are in your cycle. What's your hormones like? What's your stress level like? I just shared what mine is like. Clearly, I have a lot of stuff. I'm not an ideal candidate for fasting. I need to fuel. People, we still have this mindset of restrict to lose weight. But if you feed your body and you nourish your body and you give it that safe signal, it can let go of the inflammation. It can let go of that excess weight. We don't have to restrict. The fact that I'm eating more calories than I ever have in the past 10 years, and I'm either maintaining or losing very slowly, is mind-boggling still for me. Like, I still can't grasp how I'm eating 2,000 calories a day and with carbohydrates, and I'm not gaining weight. So I would say maybe those, but also keep in mind like where you are in your cycle, monitor your hormones, monitor your symptoms. If you start losing energy, those kind of things, you want to pull back and stop. And then there's the different types of fasting. There's time restricted fasting, there's extended fasting, there's all kinds. We all fast at some point. When you go to bed and you wake up, you're fasting, right? Unless you get up and have your midnight snack. But like for me, my fasting now, I finish dinner like around 5:36, and then I have breakfast around 7:38, somewhere in there. And so it's just around 13-hour fast. And I think that's a really possible, like a healthy one for most people. And having your breakfast, having your dinner. Sometimes I'll do an evening snack right before bed, usually in my luteal phase. I'll do that, and it holds me over and helps me sleep better. So yeah, I think that would be the ideal audience. And then as far as the detriments, doing too much, definitely progesterone. I'm sure you guys have harped on that a lot, where progesterone will suffer, thyroid will suffer, energy, fatigue will start coming in more. And then also just like even mood, irritability, pleasure in life, starts getting kind of like, sleep suffers. So if you start noticing any of those, definitely back off. But it's definitely not the first tool I go to. I have a client who's pretty obese, and we said, okay, let's do a once a week, 24-hour fast for now. And it's been helping her. But it's not going to be forever, right? It's just to get that ball rolling, and then, okay, now let's feed. Let's focus on feeding. So
right. Something that Teresa mentioned at our FACS conference was pay attention to how you feel more than you pay attention to the numbers.
Yes.
Because we're always so into numbers. So I remember with me, I don't know, this was last year sometime, I'm like, I'm going to try the fasting thing, with the whole fast like a girl craze, whatever that was, might have been 2 years ago. I felt awful. It was terrible. It was so bad. It's because I'm like you, Jen. I'm kind of more type A. I need caloric intake. I need more of it probably than the average person. And fasting was a no-go for me. And as a matter of fact, Teresa and I at FACS, we also saw Natural Womanhood, who we absolutely love. They're an incredible organization. They do a bunch of research for the layperson. They have cycle mindfulness clubs, and they do so much for the world of fertility awareness. And one of the articles that they've released was this idea of like fasting. And again, we like Mindy Pels. She does good work, but fast like a girl. Do we buy it? Do we borrow it? Or do we like skip it? They did this article on it. And ultimately at the very end of this article, they say, just borrow it. Don't buy it, but don't skip out on it completely. Basically borrow it, because this information can be helpful. And you mentioned it, Jen. Like in our luteal phase, we need more energy. Our body needs more. And so even just not fasting if you're gonna after ovulation, So anyway, I wanted to kind of give a shout out to Natural Womanhood because we really love them and we love their work. But now I'm going to punt it over to you, Teresa, to share about our podcast sponsors.
Yes. Okay. So we really love lots of our podcast sponsors. We especially love Wonder Cow Colostrum. So talking about gut health again and how you can heal your gut. Well, your gut is craving a lot of things. And one of the things that can easily solve gut issues is putting liquid gold back into it. And it doesn't even have to be for forever amounts of time, but even for myself, I have found that Wonder Cow Colostrum, putting it in my coffee after my coffee is just a little gently cooled, stopped all of my hair loss. And I think it's truly because it was healing my gut over time. So I was just so impressed by that. So if you want to try Wonder Cow Colostrum for all sorts of immune system benefits, please go to wondercow.com and use our code Hormone Genius for a discount on your order. And also, it's coming up on summer. We're spring, but it's hopefully going to get warm soon. And I'm thinking about, do I have sunscreen? Do you guys do this where you're like, do we have sunscreen for the summer? And I know a lot of us are trying to get the toxic stuff out. And so grazingbeauty.com has tallow-based sunscreen that's non-toxic. And I used it all last summer. It is lovely because it, of course, is giving your skin such beautiful nutrition with the tallow, but also a really non-toxic sunscreen. But they have a ton of other products. I love their soap bars. So go to grazingbeauty.com for 10% off. Use again our code Hormone Genius. And lastly, We Heart Nutrition, who we always mention. I talk to pregnant patients every week, and oftentimes they ask me, what do you advise me for a prenatal vitamin? And I will often say back, hey, if you want to see a great supplement company has prenatal vitamins and omega-3s that also support your baby's brain health, magnesium glycinate that will help you sleep better, and a whole host of other supplements that are bioavailable and really high quality, go to weheartnutrition.com and use our code GENIUS, just GENIUS, GENIUS, for a discount on your subscription or your one-time order. So those are our sponsors we want to talk about. Now, I want to go back to you, Jen, and I want to ask this question. So a lot of us, I think, I remember being a fan of keto and talking to my patients about keto a lot. And, we go through phases of our life that we get really excited about things, we learn about things, and we're kind of on that. And that's okay. And you were on this low carb for quite a long time, as you said. Was there any aspect now that you're kind of, changing your lifestyle and recalibrating, you could say, the science and how our bodies work, and just learning more and more every day about what's best for you and maybe what's best for other women? Was there any part of you that felt like people were going to judge you for changing? That almost like, maybe I messed this up and I was given bad advice. I'm just curious because I'm sure that is something that at least went through your mind. And how has that played out?
Yeah, I'm smiling because it's like, gosh, it's so true. I was nervous at first to share anything because this is my business too. And there's, I'm friends with a lot of big time coaches, influencers, et cetera, in the carnivore keto space. And so I was trying to be careful of my wording as well, where, like we've constantly said throughout this episode, I'm not against keto or carnivore. It's definitely a helpful tool. Keto helps with a lot of mental health, certain hormone things. I've had clients get pregnant on keto, like they couldn't get pregnant and then they're pregnant. So it definitely has its place, but just widening the scope to realize it's not what's helpful for everybody. I did have a client with PCOS and I just did the keto thing and it was making it worse for her. Things were going backwards. And I said, what is going on? So that made me dig more and be like, what else could it be? And come and find out she's one of the smaller percentages of PCOS where it's not insulin resistance driven. It was adrenal driven, and ketosis is a stressor. And so it was making it worse. So we're like, oh my gosh, we need to flip flop this. Having client stories like that is what prompted me to start shifting and start opening my eyes a little bit more. Wait a minute, it's not working for her. Well, a lot of things people say is like, well, you just didn't do it right. Like they would say this to me where I have the training, I've been doing it. I worked with a registered dietitian that uses ketogenic for therapeutic purposes. Like I wasn't just guessing, but people will tell me you did it wrong. You should have had more fat. You should have had lower fat. You should have had higher protein. You should have had lower protein. I've had people just completely unfollow me, which is fine. If that's their cup of tea, you do whatever. just don't need to announce your departure. So there has been some goods and bads. And then last year there was, I don't know how many people have known this, but there was a big fad of the sugar fast. And that's about when I started seeing some of this. Like the sugar fast in summary is all day you're eating, if you're doing the healthy version of it, you're doing fruits for all day, and then evening you have a small amount of protein, and it stimulates something called FGF21 that helps with fat burning and all those kind of things. So I had friends who were doing this and it was working for them, and then they were also bringing in carbs. They were kind of like tying it together. So I said, all right, let me try it. And it was around that time that I was thinking, oh gosh, this is working. I need to switch things up. And I had clients who it just wasn't working for. And to me, if from a business side or personal side, if people have a problem with me helping my client find what's best for them and it's outside of whatever the dogmatic view is of these other people, then that's on them. That's how I see it. Like I let my business be run by the Holy Spirit. And if I keep feeling these promptings by God to say like, we need to shift things, and not just dietary, but we're dietary, spiritual, emotional, all kinds of things. So for me, I'm basing it in my experience. I'm basing it in science that I see and how I'm helping clients. And yeah, it's whatever backlash that comes, it's on them. That's kind of how I see it. It's exposing what their personality is like.
Yeah. And I think too, there's a article I read years ago when Atomic Habits, remember that book, Atomic Habits?
Have it right up there.
Somewhere. Oh, right there. So it's James Clear is the author's name, right? Anyway, he also had a blog and he wrote this article about how whenever there is any kind of fad or a very staunch worldview of a certain thing, you're going to see people in two groups, not three. What I mean is you're either going to be somebody pro that thing. I'm in the fad. I live here now. I'm against the fad. I live here now. Two groups. Very rarely is there a third group in the middle. The third group says, I don't know. I mean, I could see yes, I could see no, but I'm not going to like put up my signpost either way. I'm just going to like kind of float in the middle. The reason he said that people are kind of more fundamental in terms of their views is because we are more comfortable when we're in community because it keeps us quote unquote safe. So in the olden days, you wouldn't want to be by yourself in a field, and the chance that, a saber-toothed tiger comes at you and kills you, destroys you. You feel safe in a community, and that's true physically in the olden days. But right now, it kind of manifests mentally. Like we don't want to be the only one with a thought. We want to be in a group. That's why so many people. It can be almost cult-like if it's really fundamental, because we feel like we're part of something. We're in a community, we're part of something. So it's very hard, but it's very important to actually think more about being in that third group in the center.
Yeah.
Because yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I forgot to mention that part. The community part was the hardest part because a lot of those people that I started growing close to started shifting away. They weren't calling out to me as much and everything. And it kind of was, it was kind of hurtful where, some people, I actually did a video recently about this topic because it needed to be talked about. And some people responded, well, maybe you talking about the carbs are triggering for them because some of them have, they say they can't eat carbs because of eating, they binge on carbs and stuff. And that's a whole different topic. But to me, if I had real life friends that I'm talking to and there's something I disagree on, whether it's food, politics, religion, I'm not going to let that one disagreement determine our whole friendship. Mm-hmm. So it was very eye-opening to me to see, yeah, I thought it was part of a community, but if it was a true community, even though I'm adding in carbohydrates and it's not what they do, they'd be like, well, good for you. I'm happy for you. It's working for you. Like, what else do we have in common? But unfortunately, that's the only thing a lot of them have in common is the way that they eat. And it's sad because I'm not against them. Like, if it's working for you, go for it. I tend to question on some of them if it's fully working. But if you're happy, I'm happy. Like, do what you want to do. Yeah, I ended up creating my own community called the Metabolic Shift because of this. And so that way women who, and I'm not dogmatic in it. You don't have to be high carb. You don't have to be low carb. It's wherever you're at. I'm just here to guide you to find what's best for you, right? So we have that community. We have the one-on-one coaching as well, but it's been really cool this year, helping them find their baseline, bringing in carbohydrates. I have one lady that came to me almost 1,100 calories a day, and she's up to 1,800. She's 70 years old, postmenopause. She's like, when I tried doing it myself, I gained another like 10 pounds. And I said, this is the strategy. We got to do it properly. And so she's up to 1,800 and just feeling fantastic, not gaining any more weight. She's still nervous about it, but it's really helpful to be in that third camp, like you say, where people will take that information from both sides and help you decipher what is best for your situation.
Yeah. And that's one thing, Jen. Well, I love lots of things about you, but one thing I really love about you is that you're open to learning, because there's also a pride aspect of this is what I believed for so long. And it's part of my quote unquote business identity, but you're willing to just follow the kind of the truth of what feels like you're saying you're feeling prompted to. And that's a good thing in a coach. That's a very good thing when you're looking at getting coached by someone. And something else I shared with you before we hit record, and I want to make sure our listeners hear this too. So I was scrolling on my phone, of course, and on YouTube, and a video popped up. And actually, I don't even know, Jen, if it clicked that it was you in this video. All I saw was that the title was like before and after keto. Oh my gosh, I'm having a brain with my.
It was the body, the DEXA scan.
Yes, and I'm like, oh, that's Jen. That's her thing. And I watched it and I loved it. And so if you guys are on YouTube and you want to learn stuff, follow Jen, because she kind of is walking you through her journey and some of these things. And you see her also being interviewed and things. So I want to make sure people know that. But Jen, we're going to wrap up here. Okay. We're going to wrap up, and then Teresa's going to ask you how people can learn more about your service. But I'm going to wrap up my part by asking you what I ask every person we interview. What do you wish every woman knew about her hormone genius?
Yeah, thank you for having me on here. It's been really fun. I love talking to you ladies. And yeah, as far as what I wish women would know about their hormone genius, I would definitely say we know that our hormones are messengers. And so they're telling us something about what's going on. And it doesn't just stop there at the hormones. It's not just your estradiol, progesterone, testosterone. Those are messengers about what else is going on in our body. So we really just need to learn how to listen to those messages and what they're trying to tell us. And then sometimes you need a little guidance on that because it can be complicated. But yeah, just learning to be intuitive and hearing what your body's saying versus what everybody else out there is saying.
Guidance is really needed for a lot of women. I know that because I see patients every week, and I know that they are so frustrated by what their body is doing and telling them. And so they do want help. And a lot of times as a woman's health nurse practitioner, I just don't have the capacity to do it myself. So we're looking to people like hormone coaches from the Fiat Institute, which Jen is a Fiat Institute hormone coach. But tell us about your services, Jen, and how people can work with you one-on-one and what's the value of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a lot of different ways of working with clients. I try to be as flexible as possible. Not everybody needs one-on-one coaching. But yeah, I do the one-on-one coaching. We meet up. I help you figure out what lab work to order, whether it's gut testing or blood work or Dutch testing for hormones. That one I don't do as often, but we have various testing, and then based on the testing and your symptoms, both, the testing is a guidance. The symptoms are the main thing we work with. I put together a protocol, always food first, lifestyle factors, both of those, and then supplements as needed. I don't believe in supplements forever. It's a temporary thing to guide your body. So I do all that, and depending on the person, the length of the program is different. If you are eating too low of a diet, too low calories, that's going to take a little bit longer to reverse up properly. So I do one-on-one coaching like that. We meet weekly and adjust things as needed. But I also do things like a functional monthly program where maybe somebody, they don't need that weekly meeting perhaps. They just want someone that can test their blood work, testing, and then they'll take the protocol and run with it. I have programs for that too, where it's more affordable also, but they have to have the gusto to work on their own in that sense. But they'll have me for their support. So we have all different things like that. I have the group program as well called the Metabolic Shift. And that one it's fun to have that community of people around you, other women like-minded, and, be able to lift each other up, get some good food ideas. So I try to do it for, wherever the person needs. But as far as working with me, you could always go to my website, jenwinkler.me, Jen with one N. Or I'm on Instagram and YouTube. Jen Winkler Wellness is my handle on both of those. And you can reach out to me at those places.
All right, Jen, that all sounds awesome. So if a woman is thinking about working with you, typically who are the women you're working with?
Yeah, good question. The main women that I focus with are women who are insulin resistant, have those hormonal imbalances, maybe estrogen dominance, maybe they're feeling symptoms of low progesterone, such as anxiety, lack of sleep. Lack of fatigue is a big one. I get a lot of women with that afternoon slump that they just can't get through that 1 to 3 o'clock, or even the 1 to 3 o'clock in the morning waking up. I have right now, a lot of my clientele are women who have been keto and carnivore and it worked until it didn't, or it just never worked. So that is becoming a big piece of it as well, which I love because I can use all that new research I have had. So I would say any of those situations, if you got weight to lose, inflammation. I've even had men who had cardiovascular issues that we're able to help with. So I'm pretty well-rounded, but that's my main focus.
Awesome. Well, awesome, Jen. Thank you so much for joining us again on our podcast, and good luck to you and your business. And thank you to all of our listeners who love and follow the Hormone Genius Podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Hormone Genius Podcast. Please remember to share our podcast with your friends and family, and also follow us on social media. If you were not aware, we have a YouTube channel, so if you could like and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay in the loop with all of our latest episodes, we would appreciate that. Thank you so much for your support. We are excited to journey alongside you as you discover the beauty and the genius of your hormones.